What's up, guys? Here we go. Day 2 of the NFL Draft reaction. Today we do the AFC and the NFC North. Yesterday we did the NFC and the AFC East. If you missed that, don't worry. The video will be linked after the podcast is over. Today we do have 2 A grades that we are handing out, but we also have a couple of C's. Who were they? Let's find out. Here we go. All right, guys, here we go. So we've got the AFC and NFC North, as you can see on the screen. Looking up a couple of different things, because we did have a lot of trades actually happen in this draft in the later rounds, but I'm definitely looking more for some of the earlier trades to be able to throw at you. But as we jump into this, you'll notice the Browns right off the bat have an A+ rating. Now, why is that? Really, it's because of the trade. And the Browns told you right up front what their plan is. Now, there have been multiple different stories that have come out since the draft, and I'll address those here real fast. They ended up drafting 2 quarterbacks, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Once again, the owner puts his weight on something that the coach and GM didn't want. They didn't want Deshaun Watson. They got him, has been an absolute disaster since he started. They didn't want Shedeur Sanders. We got to find out how this ends out still. But they drafted Dillon Gabriel, getting a quarterback, hoping that Shedeur would be drafted before the 5th round. That did not happen. So then they were kind of, their hand was forced by Haslam, who still wanted Shedeur, especially in the 5th round, which, if we're being honest, was a very good value pick. But let's go to the other draft picks before we get to the 3rd round. The first 4 picks. So they had the 3rd pick in the 3rd round. So the first 4 picks. And then the trade. The trade to me is what made this a very successful draft for Andrew Berry. And here is why. You guys know I've thought the Jaguars are sitting a true NFL scheme away from actually competing for the playoffs consistently. Their new GM is quirky. He's young. He will learn, but he came from a team in the Rams with Les Snead and Sean McVay that had an, as he said, a F the picks philosophy. They were competing for Super Bowls. You got to make the dang playoffs. And you trade the number 5 pick, the number 36 pick, a 4th round pick, and a 1st next year to move up 3 spots in the draft. The Browns fleeced the Jaguars so outrageously badly. This gives them a legitimate potential 2 top 10 picks next draft. This was a killer trade for the Browns. And then they fall down to 5 and they draft Mason Graham. Then they get Carson Schwessinger, the linebacker from UCLA, in the 2nd. They get Judkins 3 picks later, so their running back room with Judkins and Ford starting to form pretty good. They get tight end Harold Fannin from Bowling Green, who's going to play right behind Njoku. Then they draft Dylan Gabriel, which was a pick just to kind of get the owner to shut up. But then they drafted Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. So now you've got Ford, Judkins, and Sampson all in the same running back room. That is a very good running back room. And then they drafted Shedeur Sanders. They have 4 quarterbacks currently sitting on that roster. Watson will start out on the IR. My opinion is Flacco will start the season. And then, honestly, Dylan Gabriel will be second. And then, well, I don't know who's going to be third. It's truly the circus that's going to come with Sanders, because your third string quarterback is potentially going to get all the attention. I'd keep him on the practice squad. I really would. I would keep him on the practice squad. But because of the trade, because of what they did with the trade, I really fully believe the Browns got an A+ for this draft. They did an absolutely fantastic maneuverability move there. I love it. I love it. Andrew Berry definitely deserves the credit for what he did, hands down. All right, we look at the next one, which is the Cincinnati Bengals. The reason this is a C+ is because they still didn't address the offensive line enough. They didn't address the offensive line enough. They got Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, the edge rusher. Big guy, honestly works really well with Trey Hendrickson. I liked that pick at 17 with who was available. Demetrius Knight, the linebacker from South Carolina. I'm still wondering what's going to happen if they're going to trade the middle linebacker, Pratt. And then they finally get an offensive guard, Dylan Fairchild from Georgia, one of the guys I had talked about. Then they got Barrett Carter from Clemson, the linebacker. I like Barrett Carter. I really do. I like Barrett Carter. Then they got Jalen Rivers from Miami, the offensive guard, and they drafted a running back. Drafted a running back to kind of help the running back room. Honestly, it's not great right now. So we'll see what happens. You got P. Ryan back there, Chase Brown. Now you got Taj Brooks. It's lacking the need category. You needed to get more offensive line help, legitimate offensive line help. You needed to get corners to play in that division, let alone the AFC. You needed more strength. And you missed, maybe the wrong word, but all you did was draft a bunch of defense, which I'll give you. The defense wasn't great last year. But if Burrow is just buried this year because the defenses in division got even better. Even better. Regardless of what you think of their draft, which we'll talk about them next, the Steelers, they got another defensive tackle that's going to be hounding Joe Burrow from the middle of the offensive line. The Ravens, as we'll see, got another pass rusher. The Browns got a defensive lineman to come straight in Joe Burrow's face. You've got to protect the guy. Because if he's injured, you're drafting in the top 5 next year. That's just how it works. If he's injured, you are drafting in the top 5 next year. So for me, the Bengals get a C+. Did they get solid players? Yes. Did they fill needs of the team, though? No. No, they didn't fill the needs of the team enough to say that was a really, really good Really, really good draft. That was a really, really good pick. That's not what you get out of this draft with them. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I gave them a B just because it was a Pittsburgh draft. Now, I do love the Caleb Johnson pick in the 3rd round, running back out of Iowa. I do like the Jack Sawyer pick because I believe he can play linebacker, and I think he works really well with TJ Watt. I do actually like the Will Howard pick for them. I know he's not a starter, but I do like the Will Howard pick for them. The reason it's only a B, though, is because they didn't go bigger with their quarterback. Are they still planning on getting Aaron Rodgers? Is that what this is signaling? I don't know. I love their running back. They don't have an offensive line. They do not have an offensive line. I thought about giving them a C. I'm really going to be honest. I really thought about giving them a C. But they got running back. And that was a huge need. They got running back. And they got a good one, in my opinion. NFL ready. Caleb Johnson's ready to go. He'll split time with Jalen Warren just like Najee Harris did. Derek Harmon, even though it may be the wrong pick, is a really good player. Really good defensive tackle. He would have been, based off of how this draft went, he would have been drafted in the next 5 picks too. So, it's just, I wanted to give him a C because they didn't take care of the quarterback. And they didn't take care of the offensive line. And once again showed they are allergic to offense. So, I don't know. I like who they drafted, though. Who they drafted fits the Pittsburgh mold. And that's really what it comes down to for me. It fits the team really well, although they didn't take care of any needs. All right, the next one. The Baltimore Ravens get a B+. I wanted to give them an A. And here's why I didn't. I felt they could have done more. And what I mean by that is simply this. They feel comfortable with their offensive line. Fine. Their secondary was awful last year. Awful. And I know what you're thinking, but they drafted Starks. That was a safety. He's not a corner. They need a legitimate corner. They need their nickel corner. If nothing else, absolutely need their nickel corner. And they do not have that guy yet in that secondary. Now, Malachi Starks, A+ pick, falls to them at 27. Duh. I mean, when he falls, I'm going, yeah, the Ravens are going to draft him. So now you got Hamilton and Starks at the back. Good luck. Mike Green in the 2nd round, the edge from Marshall, speed rusher. Guy that can control the edge. Good pick. Emory Jones gets a tackle from LSU, the opposite of Will Campbell. Well done. Buchanan, the linebacker from California. Vincent, the tackle from Alabama A&M. And then you have a bunch of guys from the 6th round on because they had a lot of late picks. But they got LeJonte Wester, the wide receiver from Colorado. Loop, the place kicker from Arizona, potentially to replace Tucker, depending on what happens with all the allegations and everything else that is there. We've seen that destroy careers before. So that was a smart move by the Ravens. Why is it a B+ and not an A? Corner was a need, and you didn't address it. You did great with the rest of the picks. The defense needed strengthened. You absolutely did that. Starks, Green, beautifully done. Got yourself another offensive tackle to protect Lamar Jackson. Great. You didn't take care of corner. And I know everybody's out there, well, you can't take care of everything. No. But in a draft where defensive line was so deep, you went with Mike Green early instead of getting your corner in that pick right there at the end of the 2nd round. Mike Green, a defensive lineman to be able to play in the Ravens scheme, could easily have been drafted in the 4th round. He didn't have to go there. So that's why they're a B+, not an A. Their corners are still weak. Their safeties are outrageously strong, but their corners are still weak. All right, the NFC North, starting out with the Detroit Lions, we're going to give them a B. And really, it's because of the generalization. They only had 3 picks in the first 4 rounds, and then they had a 5th, 6th, and 2 7ths. Their first 3 picks, Tyleik Williams, the defensive tackle from Ohio State, this was 100% a playoff pick. Getting bigger on the defensive line, getting a little bit more depth in the middle of that defensive line to be able to play with Philadelphia and Los Angeles. That's what it's there for. And especially now with Minnesota's offensive line arguably going to be competing with Detroit for the best one in that division. I know that seems out, a little far out there, but I don't see a better offensive line outside of the Lions in that division. The Bears have improved. The Packers are solid. The Vikings have spent purposeful money and draft picks on the offensive line, as we'll see. They got Isaac Tisla from Arkansas, the receiver. Miles Frazier from LSU, the offensive guard, which is for depth. And then they got 2 really smart guys, Dan Jackson, the safety from Georgia. I think he's going to be a great special teams guy. And then Dominic Lovett, the receiver from Georgia. I think he's going to return kicks. So not bad. But, it's definitely kind of just drafted well. All right, the next A, the Chicago Bears. And you may be wondering why. Well, they had 5 picks in the first 4 rounds, and they each took care of a different need on the team. They draft Colston Loveland, which I thought they were going to draft Tyler Warren. The more I thought about it, Loveland actually fits. Cole Kmet will be the blocking tight end. Loveland will be split out on plays when Burden is not out there, because they also drafted Luther Burden, replacing, getting another slot guy, keeping the weapons for Caleb Williams. Then they draft the offensive tackle from Boston College. I like the pick. I've told you guys I will never, ever criticize picking offensive linemen in a league where that's basically it. That is basically it. Then in the second round later on, from Buffalo, they trade back in and they get Shamar Turner, the 6'3", 290 defensive tackle from Texas A&M. That was a really smart pick. Of all the positions on defense, the Bears probably needed a little bit of help. Defensive tackle was one of them. The edges are set, but a lot like the Lions, defensive tackle still needed a little bit of work. And then their 4th round pick, Ruben Hippolyte, the linebacker from Maryland, I believe is a special teams / goal line pick. He's just a big guy. He really is just a big guy. They traded back in with Buffalo and got that 4th round pick. So, all in all, the picks actually, there was probably one of the best drafts I've seen from Ryan Poles. The picks all made sense. They didn't reach for anybody. Burden was a 2nd round pick. Golden is already off the board. Egbuka is already off the board. Burden for most was sitting there as the 4th best receiver or 3rd best receiver. So they're in the 2nd round. You're looking. You don't really need to draft offensive tackle sitting there. You didn't really need to do anything else. My one criticism, maybe I thought they were going to draft a bigger running back. They ended up getting one in the 7th round. I thought they may go bigger. Obviously, Brad Johnson's okay with Rashawn Johnson and DeAndre Swift heading into the season, which is fine. But they took care of needs and didn't reach for anybody. That is prime key. They didn't reach for anybody. They had guys fall to them, and then they just drafted them. They got 2 more weapons for Caleb Williams. They got another offensive lineman to protect him. They got another defensive tackle to rush and help. They got a linebacker to be able to come in. He'll be a rotational linebacker. Stuff the run. Play hard. Play big boy football. This draft actually made me very, very impressed with Brad Johnson, who I know is in most of the control, and Ryan Poles. So for me, they get an A. This Green Bay Packers do get a B plus. Now, the whole entire thing with the Packers is they're still under undermanned on defense, and they still got some questions on defense. Even though Haley is outstanding defensive coordinator, offensively, I do like how this draft played out. I almost gave them an A. They drafted Matthew Golden, a wide receiver, in the first round. That probably deserves an A right away. You know what? Screw it. We'll give him an A. Let's do it. We'll give him an A. And here's why. They drafted another receiver, Savion Williams from TCU. I told you that could happen. At the end of the day, Matt LaFleur knew he needed healthy wide receivers to be able to control the narrative on the offense. Constantly having injured receivers does not give you the ability to have an effective offense. So he drafts two receivers. Watson is too injury prone. I think he's out. We'll see if Wicks grows this year. He could be out. Dobbs, if he gets injured again, could be out. Jaden Reed. There's so many injuries in that wide receiver room. If Matthew Golden and Savion Williams are just the healthiest ones, they will start. If they're just healthy and able to play, they will start. And Golden, to me, is a very underrated pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I know everybody's like, well, hold it. This is going to be Cam Ward and Ashton Genty. Oh, hold on. Hold on. Matthew Golden has the potential of being the Javon Walker for Green Bay. He's got that ability. And if he's the only one that's healthy, LaFleur will give him the deep dig routes. He will get the 10 to 15 yard receptions consistently. He will be a prime target for Jordan Love. Look out for Matthew Golden. If he's healthy, I want to stress, if he's healthy. He gets injured, all bets are off. Now their second pick, Anthony Belton from NC State, offensive lineman. Solid pick. Solid pick. No judgments there. Savion Williams, obviously, already talked about that. Baron Sorrell, the edge rusher from Texas, took care of a question mark. They needed a better pass rush on third down. It works, but they didn't get anything in the secondary. I really felt they needed to get really strong in their secondary, especially since you're going to be playing a lot of man now. Man cover 2. You're not going to be playing zone because you've got teams with Minnesota, Chicago, and Detroit in your own division that are constantly going to be doing play action and running the ball. Chicago's offense will be 60-40 run pass. Minnesota's offense could be 65-35 run to pass. Detroit is really good at being about 50-50. So you've got to be able to man up on the outside. Jair Alexander could potentially stay on the team. That is the new report that has come out. Could actually potentially stay on the team. But the reality is they aren't as strong in the secondary as they really need to be when it comes to being a man-up 1v1 team. That's simple. All right, the last team, the Minnesota Vikings. I gave them a C+, and this is partly because they only had 5 picks. There just wasn't a lot to grade, and I felt they could have done a couple of other things that made them a little bit better. Their number 1 pick, to me, was an A pick. Donovan Jackson, the utility offensive lineman from Ohio State. He can play center, he can play guard, he can play tackle. To me, he will play the left guard position. That's where I think they will plug him in at, which means you're going to have outstanding left tackle, rookie left guard, veteran center in Ryan Kelly. Will Fry's up-and-coming guard, if he continues his dominance, will be a great signing. Great signing. And then you've got your right tackle. Now, something about this draft, though, after that just kind of felt, I don't know, with all the losses they had on defense, it just didn't feel like it was as much of a focus as it should have been. They got Kobe King, the linebacker from Penn State, who I think is smart enough for Brian Flores' defense. And then they got Tyrion Ingram Dawkins from Georgia, the edge rusher. But because of the picks and where they were at, they didn't make any moves. Maybe they really thought this was a weak draft. But I think if you're only judging Donovan Jackson and then Ty Felton, the receiver from Maryland, you can really only give him a C+, because Donovan Jackson, decent. Ty Felton, I mean, he was a late third-round pick. Well, we'll see what happens. Does he fit the offense? I mean, he's kind of like a Jalen Naylor and Jalen Reagor. So we'll see what happens. But I felt defensively, with all the pieces they lost, it would actually really do them some good to move up into this draft, to get defensive pieces in a defensive draft. It really would have done them good, but they didn't. So I'm going to give them a C+ because I think they didn't make enough moves for what they needed to do. And it's that simple. All right, guys. Day 2 done. AFC NFC North done. Tomorrow we do the South, which for a lot of people is boring because they don't really respect the South on either side, which is fine. But tomorrow we will do the South. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you. It is Tuesday evening. Make it the best Wednesday that you can. We will be halfway through the week then. The weekend is one day closer. So make it the best Wednesday that you can. I will talk to you guys tomorrow night. Please like and subscribe. As always, I deeply appreciate it. Until tomorrow night, guys, for Sports Talk with Hawk, I am Hawk, and I am out. Have a great evening.